Ask most people what the AI race is about, and they'll say the same thing. Chips, GPUs, NVIDIA. That's not wrong. But it's not where this story actually starts anymore. Right now, AI companies are buying up enormous amounts of land. In some of the most unglamorous places in America, cornfields, desert scrubland, land next to power plants nobody thinks about. Before they even talk about chips, they're fighting over dirt. So why does a company that makes software need thousands of acres of land? Here's the thing, it's not just any land. Most land on Earth is actually useless for this. A data center site needs a very specific checklist. Almost nowhere on the planet actually qualifies. It needs access to enormous amounts of electricity, way beyond what a normal town uses. It needs to sit close to a substation. That's the equipment that steps power down to something a building can actually use. It needs high-voltage transmission lines nearby, the actual physical wires carrying that power in. It needs water for cooling, and it needs fiber optic cable to move data in and out at the speed AI requires. Miss even one of those, and the land is worthless for this purpose, no matter how cheap it is. So where do you actually find all five? In one place, next to a nuclear plant, which already generates enormous power on site. Next to a dam, for the same reason. Next to an existing power plant of any kind, since the transmission infrastructure is already built. Or out in the desert, where land is cheap and wide open, even if the power has to be built from scratch. This is exactly why Amazon didn't just buy some land in Pennsylvania. It bought land specifically next to the Susquehanna nuclear plant. Amazon paid $650 million for a campus sitting directly beside that plant. Then it went further. It expanded the project with over $20 billion in additional investment. The goal: convert the entire site into an AI campus running on nuclear power. That's not a coincidence of location. That's the entire point of the location. Here's the catch, though. There are only so many nuclear plants, dams, and major power plants in the country, and every single one of the big AI companies wants to be next to one at the same time, which means the good land is already running out. Meta, Microsoft, Google, and Amazon are all chasing the same short list of sites. It's turned into a genuine scramble. Meta actually tried to build a nuclear-adjacent data center at one specific site. The plan fell apart, for a reason nobody would have predicted. Regulators found out the land was home to a rare species of bee. The project got blocked. Meta had to go back to the drawing board entirely. It put out an open call to any nuclear developer willing to build new capacity somewhere, anywhere, just to keep the AI build-out on schedule. Google signed a deal with a company called Kairos Power, up to 500 megawatts across 6 or 7 small reactors. The first one is targeting 2030. Microsoft went a different route entirely. It's paying $16 billion over 20 years to help restart the shutdown reactor at 3 Mile Island. Yes, that 3 Mile Island, the site of America's most famous nuclear accident in 1979. It's being renamed the Crane Clean Energy Center. Microsoft is racing to get it fully powered by 2027. Meta, after the bee incident, came back even bigger. It signed deals across 4 separate companies: TerraPower, Oklo, Vistra, Constellation, adding up to as much as 6.6 gigawatts of nuclear capacity. That's enough to power roughly 5 million homes. Just for one company's AI ambitions. Together, these 4 companies have now locked up nearly 10 gigawatts of nuclear power between them. And even that hasn't been enough to avoid conflict. Amazon actually had a data center power deal denied outright by federal regulators. They worried the expansion could cause brownouts or blackouts for everyone else sharing that grid. That's the real shape of this competition. It's not just who can build the biggest data center. It's who can grab a spot on an already crowded grid before someone else does. Even when there's technically enough land available, the power infrastructure underneath it often isn't. In parts of Texas, one specific substation already has 2 massive solar projects queued up, ahead of any new data center. One targeting 2027, another targeting 2029, both competing for the same limited grid capacity. That's not a hypothetical bottleneck. That's an actual waiting line, with a company's name on it, sitting in front of yours. This scramble has created a genuine new asset class in commercial real estate. Investment firms like Blackstone, Brookfield, and KKR are now competing for the same small inventory of power-ready sites, the same way they'd compete over prime office towers a decade ago. Developers who can bring land that's already pre-permitted and pre-powered to market are commanding real premiums for it. Expected returns on this kind of land development are running between 12 and 18%. Compare that to the 7 to 9% typical for ordinary industrial land in the same regions. Powered land, in other words, is now worth roughly double what identical unpowered land is worth, purely because of what sits underneath it. This has also reshaped which cities are winning. Northern Virginia used to be the undisputed center of the data center world. Atlanta actually passed it for new leasing activity for the first time recently, driven partly by easier access to power. Phoenix has become a major hub too, as utilities there work directly with developers to plan new substations in advance. Smaller cities are getting pulled into this too now. Columbus, Indianapolis, Kansas City, Reno. None of these were considered data center markets 5 years ago. Now they're seeing early hyperscaler interest, specifically because power is still available there, while it's already gone in the traditional hubs. Even when a company does win the land, it doesn't mean the fight is over. Local communities are pushing back, hard, in places that used to welcome this kind of investment without a second thought. In Tucson, Arizona, the city council unanimously rejected a proposed data center complex, citing water and electricity concerns. In West Virginia, over 1,000 residents signed a petition against a new law that stripped local communities of control over data center approvals. In Indiana, county commissioners unanimously rejected a $10 billion data center project after farmland preservation concerns and organized community pushback. Residents worry about water usage in regions already dealing with drought. They worry about noise from cooling systems that run around the clock. They worry about their own electricity bills rising as utilities pass along the cost of new infrastructure. Infrastructure built for a facility that employs a tiny fraction of the workers a factory once would have. Permitting delays are stacking up in state after state as more communities start asking harder questions before saying yes. So here's the actual reframe worth sitting with. For years, everyone assumed the AI race was fundamentally a chip race. Whoever makes the best processor wins. That's true, but it's incomplete. Increasingly, the actual constraint isn't computing power. It's real estate. Specifically, the tiny sliver of real estate on Earth that happens to sit next to enough electricity to run a small country's worth of computing. Think of it like a massive game of musical chairs. 5 major AI companies, all still expanding. Only a handful of truly qualified sites at any given time. The ones near nuclear plants, dams, and major power infrastructure. When the music stops, whoever doesn't have a seat isn't just missing out on a building. They're missing out on the ability to run their AI models at scale, at all, regardless of how good their chips are. That's why Meta went from one specific B-blocked site to an open bidding war across the entire nuclear industry. That's why Amazon paid a premium to sit directly next to an existing reactor, instead of building power from scratch somewhere cheaper. That's why companies are increasingly willing to fund their own power generation on-site, rather than wait years in a queue for a utility connection that might not even come through in time. Even small modular reactors, the newer, smaller nuclear option, only need 35 to 50 acres of land. Compare that to over 1,000 acres for a traditional plant. That difference alone is reshaping where the next wave of AI infrastructure gets built. The chips still matter. NVIDIA still matters. But none of it works without a plot of land, wired into enough electricity to actually run it. And that plot of land, unlike a chip, can't be manufactured faster. It either exists next to a power source that already works, or it doesn't. Which means the company that ends up dominating the AI race might not be the one with the best model. It might simply be the one that got there first. The one that bought the land before anyone else even knew to look.